Tiffany Adams was 20 years old when she disappeared on November 5, 2014 in Sullivan, Indiana. She was 8 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance. Tiffany left her father's home to visit her mother, who lived in the house next door. She never showed up at her mother's house and was never seen again. Her family reported her missing on November 7th, 2 days after she was last seen. Sullivan is a city in Hamilton Township and the county seat of Sullivan County, Indiana, United States. As of the 2010 census, the population was just over 4,000. Many young people think about leaving Sullivan and moving to a bigger city. After Tiffany graduated from high school and her boyfriend, Donnie Barron, found out that Tiffany was pregnant. She was happy, excited, constantly talking about the baby and how happy she was. She was very excited that the baby was on the way and approaching her due date. But on November 5, 2014, when Tiffany was 8 months pregnant, her family's life changed irrevocably. Tiffany was gone. Her boyfriend, Donnie Barron, and her father, Bruce Adams, began looking for her, but Tiffany was nowhere to be seen. She wasn't answering her phone calls, and no one knew where she might be or what had happened to her. Adding to the worry was the fact that she was pregnant. Pregnant women don't just disappear. Something was wrong. Bruce Adams, Tiffany Adams' father, didn't call police on November 5th, the day she went missing. He thought he had to wait 48 hours before a report could be filed. It's a common misconception that when a person goes missing, you should wait 24 or 48 hours. In fact, you should never wait. If you have someone missing, you need to call the police immediately. So Bruce didn't contact the police until November 7th. He told the sheriff that on November 5th, he left Tiffany and Donnie at his house and went out. He was gone for about an hour, and when he returned, only Donnie was in the house. So Bruce asked Donnie where Tiffany was. Donnie replied that she was at her mom's house, Christina, who lived a short walk away. Bruce Adams was not actually Tiffany Adams's biological father. Her biological father had played no role in her life since she was born. The sheriff met with Christina, Tiffany's mother, but she did not know where her daughter might be. According to Christina, the last time she saw Tiffany was October 30th, 5 days before she disappeared. To find out what happened to Tiffany and where she may be as soon as possible, a detective from the state police was brought in to investigate. In investigations like this one, police immediately focus on the people closest to the disappeared person. The detective wanted to talk to Tiffany's boyfriend first, since Donnie was the last person to see her. But it turned out that Donnie had left town and no one knew where he was. The fact that he left town right after his pregnant girlfriend disappeared was a serious concern. At this point in the investigation, the police had 2 prime suspects in Tiffany's disappearance: Bruce Adams, Tiffany's stepfather, and Donnie Barron, her boyfriend, but he was nowhere to be found. The news that Tiffany was missing spread quickly through Sullivan. When such a young woman, 8 months pregnant, goes missing, it affects people so much more because she had her whole life ahead of her. There were rumors that she had been kidnapped, but at the same time everyone hoped she would just come home. There were a lot of rumors that Tiffany didn't run away anywhere. People said they had seen her, but those were just rumors. Since the police did not know where Donnie was, they focused their attention on Bruce Adams. Bruce stated that his alibi was that he went to the store, and while he was at the store, Tiffany left his house. The detective went to the grocery store and found out that Bruce did go in there on November 5th, but that may not have meant anything because the exact time of Tiffany's disappearance was unknown. Bruce was very worried about Tiffany's disappearance. He said that he would never hurt her. He loved her like his own daughter. He participated in the search for her and hoped that she would return home unharmed. Bruce pointed police to another suspect. While talking to a detective, Bruce said Brian Orr, who was married to Tiffany's mother, Christina, was responsible for Tiffany's disappearance. Let me remind you that according to Bruce, he went to the grocery store on November 5th, and when he returned home, Tiffany was not there. Bruce also shared other important information. Around 1 p.m. on November 5, 2014, Bruce received 3 phone calls on his landline phone from Tiffany's cell phone. When Bruce answered the first call, he heard a man's voice in the background before the call was disconnected. When he answered the second call, he did not hear anything. However, the second call was also disconnected. When Bruce answered the third call, he again heard a male voice yelling in the background. Bruce testified that during one of the phone calls he heard commotion and Tiffany's voice saying, "Dad, Dad." Bruce then placed approximately 10 calls to Tiffany's cell phone. All of his calls to Tiffany's cell phone were routed to voicemail. Bruce believed that the man who had yelled at Tiffany was Brian Orr, and he believed that Brian had attacked Tiffany because Brian didn't get along with her. It was important information, and it needed to be verified. The detective talked to Tiffany's friend to find out what her relationship with her new stepfather was like. Tiffany's friend revealed that Tiffany never said anything nice about her stepfather, Brian Orr. She often talked about how he called her various bad words, about how she couldn't visit her mom because of him, and about how Brian wouldn't let Tiffany talk to her mom unless she was on speakerphone. Obviously, Brian Orr was controlling her, and that made him another suspect. The police needed to find out why he was preventing Tiffany from communicating with her mother, and if he had an alibi for the day she disappeared. Tiffany expressed her feelings on social media. She wrote a post about her mom going back to Brian Orr. Tiffany was upset about this and did not speak well of Brian in her post. What if Brian saw this post by Tiffany and got mad at her about it? Could her mother have been hiding something? There were a lot of questions that the police needed to answer. To clarify the relationships of all the people I've previously mentioned in this video, I'll take a moment to do so. So, at the time of Tiffany's disappearance, her mother Christina was married to Brian Orr. Prior to her marriage to Brian, Christina was married to Bruce Adams. Bruce was not Tiffany's biological father, but he married Christina around the time Tiffany was born, and he took on the responsibility and role of Tiffany's father. Bruce's house and Brian and Christina's house were within walking distance, so Brian and Christina's house could be seen from Bruce's yard. Brian and Christina had developed a strained relationship with Bruce. I hope I haven't confused you further. Please share your opinion in the comments. 6 days after Tiffany disappeared, on November 11, 2014, police came with a search warrant to Christina and Brian's home. The couple was not thrilled that police officers were searching their residence. They were looking for anything that could link Tiffany to their home, any signs of a struggle, anything that could give a clue as to where Tiffany might be. During the search, officers found a security camera on a pole that was pointed at the driveway of Brian and Christina Orr's home. Upon closer examination, it appeared to be a camera trap that responded to motion. It was important for the police to find the footage from this camera because they believed it could help them find out the truth about what happened to Tiffany. But as it turned out, the camera didn't have a memory card, and thus there was no recording either. Could it have been a mere coincidence, or had someone deliberately removed the memory card because it could have been an important piece of evidence? Police were considering all possible theories. At the time, Brian Orr was a suspect, but there was no evidence that he was involved in Tiffany's disappearance. At the beginning of the investigation, Tiffany's boyfriend, Donnie Barron, was a potential suspect. When Bruce reported Tiffany missing, the last person to see Tiffany alive was Donnie, but he had left town. Eventually, the sheriff was able to track him down and talk to him. Donnie said he was in love with Tiffany, but he didn't understand why she was gone like that. Who could she have been with? Donnie dreamed of helping Tiffany raise the baby. But if he had all these plans, why was he hiding? Why wasn't he helping with the investigation and the search? Could Donnie have hurt Tiffany in any way? Donnie had a weak alibi. He was the only one who could confirm that he was alone in Bruce's house when it was discovered that Tiffany was missing. Another important fact came to light. Donnie was not actually the father of Tiffany's baby. The biological father of the baby was Paul Artem McHenry. In high school, Artem was every girl's dream. He was strong and muscular, and all the girls at school wanted him to pay attention to them. Tiffany and Artem were together for about 3 years, but broke up around March 2014. After that, she went from a relationship with Artem to a relationship with Donnie very quickly. When Tiffany found out she was pregnant, she was surprised. She didn't know who the father of the baby was, Donnie or Artem. At the time, everyone hoped that the baby was Donnie's because she and Artem had broken up. However, after she had an ultrasound and found out the gestational age, she realized that the baby was Artem's. She was very excited. Tiffany and Artem's relationship was complicated, and their breakup was not easy either. Tiffany published this post on October 1, 2014. She wrote, "Looks like my baby boy Sil be growing up with me taking both roles as a mom and dad. My baby's father is seriously worthless. He just informed me he was going to sign his rights over and he didn't know if he could handle this." After Donnie found out that Tiffany was pregnant and that Artem was the baby's father, he just accepted it. Artem McHenry became another suspect, so the sheriff met with him and talked to him. He said he was at work on November 5th, 30 miles from Sullivan. His alibi was eventually confirmed. Days went by, then weeks, but there was no progress in the investigation until December 30th, 2014, when 55 days had passed since the disappearance. Next, I'm going to read an excerpt from the official report, which says, and I quote, "Tiffany was reported missing on November 7th, 2014. Law enforcement efforts to locate her were unsuccessful. Tiffany's body was eventually discovered on December 30th, 2014, by two Sullivan County farmers in a field where they were belatedly harvesting corn. Her body had decomposed and animals had disturbed it. A red fleece jacket was knotted around Tiffany's neck and a leaf was found within the knot. Tiffany's cell phone was not found with her body. It's important to note that the leaf was inside the knot, meaning that the jacket was tied around Tiffany's neck, not somewhere else, but in a cornfield. At first, the farmer thought he saw a mannequin, but as he got closer, he realized it wasn't a mannequin at all. It was the body of a young woman. She had dark hair. She was wearing brown boots. Remarkably, her body did not decompose much because November and December in 2014 were very cold. The court documents say the following, and I quote, "The pathologist conducted an autopsy on December 31st, 2014, and determined that the cause of Tiffany's death was ligature strangulation. Her body had sustained a broken rib from an unknown cause. The pathologist determined that the fetus Tiffany carried was viable and, essentially, suffocated due to Tiffany's death." The police had a lot of questions. How could this have happened? Who had done this? How could someone be so cruel to hurt someone so badly? How could someone be so cruel to take not only Tiffany's life, but another life that hadn't even begun yet? As Tiffany's body was exposed to the elements, important pieces of information, including DNA, were washed away, making the investigation extremely difficult. Tiffany's phone records provided very important information to the investigation because investigators were able to track the numbers she called, the people she talked to, and the people she sent text messages to. In this case, they learned that before Tiffany Adams disappeared, she was texting with Amber Orr. Amber Orr is the wife of Jonas Orr. Brian Orr is Jonas's father and Tiffany's stepfather. Jonas and Amber had a 4-year-old son, and Tiffany sometimes looked after him. It was important to talk to Amber because she may have been one of the last people to communicate with Tiffany. When investigators first spoke to Amber, she said that she and Jonas shared a cell phone and took turns using it. Through further investigation, detectives found that it was not unusual for Tiffany and Amber to text each other. Detectives wanted to check the cell phone that Jonas and Amber had at the time Tiffany went missing. However, by the time investigators spoke to Jonas and Amber, they already had a new phone. They said they went to rent a video the day Tiffany disappeared, and police were able to confirm with the video store that Jonas and Amber were there that day. Police couldn't find Tiffany's phone, but they were able to track its movements on the day she disappeared. After Tiffany left her father's house, her phone ended up in different places in a short period of time. This clearly indicated that she was in a car and was able to travel such a distance in such a short time. But Tiffany did not own a car. At that point, Tiffany's boyfriend, Donnie Barron, and Tiffany's stepfather, Brian Orr, were still at the top of the suspect list. However, Police were able to determine that Donnie had not left Bruce's house when Tiffany went missing. Now, Brian Orr and his alibi for the day Tiffany went missing had to be checked. Brian and Christina told investigators that they weren't even home that day. They were renovating an apartment on the outskirts of town and didn't return home until the evening. Cell phone records showed that Tiffany was outside her mother's house at 11:15 a.m. that day. After that, her cell phone was turned off for approximately 39 minutes. The next time the phone turned on, it moved to the area where her body was found. The last known location of her phone was Lake Sullivan. One of the most important questions was whose car Tiffany was traveling in and whether the driver of that car was involved in her death. During further investigation, police learned that on the day Tiffany disappeared, her half-brother Jonas Orr had borrowed a Chevrolet Blazer from his buddy Jim Fish. Jim was working at a sawmill, and Jonas was supposed to drive there to return the Blazer, but Jonas was about 6 hours late. He told Jim that the Blazer had broken down and the delay was due to that. What you are seeing now is an excerpt from a court document that goes into more detail. If you are interested, you can pause this video and read what it says. For those who don't watch the video but only listen, I'll reiterate that you need to pay attention to the fact that Jonas returned the Blazer 6 hours late. Jonas Orr found himself at the center of an investigation. Jonas and Amber said they were at the video store when Tiffany went missing. The detectives did go back to the video store that Amber and Jonas said they were at. Their receipts confirmed that they were there. However, they had visited the video store that day much later than investigators had originally thought. This meant that theoretically, they could have been involved in what happened to Tiffany. As I mentioned earlier, the last place Tiffany's phone was active was Lake Sullivan. What the dive team did, the police considered it a miracle. They found the phone. Here's what the official report on Tiffany's phone says, and I quote, "On August 27, 2015, Tiffany's cell phone was found in Lake Sullivan, approximately 1/2 mile from where Jonas told Sheriff Cottam the Blazer had broken down on the day Tiffany went missing. All of the text messages on Tiffany's cell phone that were sent on the date of her disappearance had been deleted from her cell phone when it was found. Later, however, the Indiana State Police Cyber Crimes Unit was able to recover the deleted messages word for word. After reviewing the messages, investigators learned that Jonas had been texting his wife Amber using Tiffany's cell phone. Tiffany had a new phone number. Amber did not know her phone number, and that is why Amber did not recognize the number when she received the text message. She later learned that it was Jonas texting from Tiffany's phone. Amber was thus eliminated as a suspect. Amber Orr filed for divorce in November 2015. Police were able to recover all of the text messages. If you are interested, you can stop the video and read excerpts from the court documents that contain all the information about the text messages. At the first interview, Jonas claimed that he last saw Tiffany in September 2014 at the Dollar General store where a family dispute arose and the police were called to the scene. Jonas told Sheriff Cottam that on the day Tiffany went missing, Jim's Blazer broke down near County Road 300 North and County Road 75 East, about 1 mile from the sawmill. Jonas told the sheriff that he had flagged down a car with 2 strangers in it who offered to jump the Blazer. The strangers allowed him to use their cell phone so that he could contact his wife, Amber. Jonas stated that he sent a text message to Amber using the stranger's cell phone. After restarting the Blazer, he allowed it to idle for a few minutes. He then returned the cell phone to the strangers and drove directly to the sawmill. He indicated that the encounter with the strangers lasted approximately 20 minutes. Jonas told the sheriff that when he arrived at the sawmill, he then asked to borrow Jim's cell phone. At that point, he called Amber and told her where to pick him up. Jonas denied any involvement in the death of Tiffany Adams. He could not imagine that the police would be able to find Tiffany's phone and recover all the text messages. An Indiana State Police Laboratory forensic scientist examined possible evidence collected from Jim's Blazer. The scientist confirmed that red fibers found in Jim's vehicle could have originated from the red fleece jacket that was found knotted around Tiffany's neck. Jonas Orr was arrested. He has been charged in connection with the deaths of Tiffany and her unborn child. Police believe that on November 5, 2014, after Tiffany left Bruce Adams's home, she headed to her mother Christina's home. But neither Christina nor her husband Brian Orr was home. At some point, Jonas intercepted Tiffany in Jim's borrowed car. Jonas drove Tiffany to a cornfield where he took her life. After he threw Tiffany's cell phone into the lake, Jonas returned to his father's house and pulled the memory card from the hunting camera to get rid of evidence of Tiffany getting into his car. Brian Orr was taken off the suspect list. The possible motive for the crime is the complicated relationship between Jonas and Tiffany. Jonas disliked Tiffany very much, and there was a long-standing feud between them. Jonas was very close to his father. He may have been angered by what Tiffany wrote on social media about his father. But what must be in a man's mind to do such a thing to a pregnant young woman? It defies explanation. Do you think Jonas regretted what he did to Tiffany? Take a few seconds to think about it. So here's what the court documents say, and I quote, John Klein, who was incarcerated with Jonas from August 2015 through February 2016, also testified as a witness for the state. He testified that while he and Jonas were in jail watching a television show about a cold case murder investigation, Klein commented to Jonas that he found it hard to believe that someone could avoid talking about a crime like that for so long. Jonas responded, "You'd be amazed at what you can live with when you have to." Klein further testified that on another occasion, Jonas indicated that he did not feel sorry about what he did to Tiffany, but that he felt badly about the baby. Per Klein, Jonas asked Klein if he thought that God would forgive him. Jonas Orr pleaded not guilty. In July 2016, he was sentenced to two 60-year prison terms to be served consecutively.